The clock is ticking for an estimated 1.1 million matrics from the class of 2020 who will sit for their final exams in 2 months' time after arguably the most challenging year they could have faced during their school careers. Now, with uncertainty still lingering about much of what is to come, these students now have to ensure they get into the right frame of mind to perform to the best of their ability in spite of challenges. This is the view of education expert Wonga Nchinga, Senior Head of Program in the Faculty of ICT at the Independent Institute of Education. He now joins us to discuss matric exams and preparation. Wonga, thank you so much for joining us. Now, perhaps before we get into the matrics, I just want to get your thoughts on this. Now, the Department of Basic Education has scrapped final examinations for grades 10 and 11 learners and will instead replace them with controlled tests. What are the implications for Matric 2021 with this regard?
Well, my understanding, and we wouldn't want to comment that much on this one, but just in brief, the government has a right to make such changes where they see that there's going to be a problem with the time with regards to teaching, learning, and assessments. We are of the view that the national policy does allow government to make changes with regards to even the weights of exams if needs be. When I read through the document that they published, it's just adjustments on 60-40 weighting, which is a normal standard, and many other institutions are doing that to accommodate the learners. You'll agree that this year has been very disruptive. We had the closure around in March for the schools. We had to reclose again in July for another 4 weeks for public schools. And therefore, there has been some interruptions, and it will be improper for us not to acknowledge that and make plans around it. If you look at the current plan for grade 12 to extend their assessment time, where they will finish in December, with the marking that will finish in January, and therefore the results will be released in February. Those are the changes that are needed at this time of this pandemic.
Now, Wonga, the hard and the very strict lockdown had the education fraternity at loggerheads for most of this time, with many believing the 2020 academic year should be scrapped. Was it a good decision to go ahead with schooling given those challenges?
There's no vaccine on this. There's no cure. If you look at the health science, the predictions are that we're still going to have this virus living with us. So we have to probably start coexisting with it. What we should be doing is to ensure that we as you can see on your video, is to ensure that the students continuously observe the health protocol, wear the mask, wash your hands with soap on a regular basis, practice the social physical distancing, which is very important. And the schools have to continue doing the health checks. There's no way around it. And we have to just carry on. We can't afford to lose this academic year. So we are in support of what government has done so far.
Now, as the class of 2020 prepare for finals, the clock is ticking and there's a big concern around access to the internet for online resources. How can that be overcome by some learners, especially who don't have access?
Well, if you look at the initiative by the Department of Basic Education, including the support that has come through from private corporates, it does show that there's a lot that can be done. For example, if you look at the Matrics initiative, where they have tried to ensure that the grade 12s are getting ready for the exams and preparing them for that. I mean, the Matric initiative goes across your DSTV as well as your SABC3 channels. And I will encourage the Matrics grade 12s to take a note of that and make use of the television resource. Public schools have to come into play as well, including the private schools. For example, they must have the revision time. Prelims are important. test and assure that students can be ready for the exams. The department has also what they term your online material. So I'll advise students to make sure that they make use of that. The higher institutions as well can play an important role. For example, I know some of them, they are taking advantage of making these question papers physically available to the students. So you can walk in at any of the higher education institutions and ask them to provide you with the previous question papers. And that is to ensure that you know what is coming up in the next coming 2 months.
Now, Wonga, there's sentiment that the way learning is currently happening will be a norm for some time going forward. Even the class of 2020 will probably find themselves at university level next year learning the same way. Now, creativity then becomes even more important during this time, isn't it?
It does. And I mean, we have to give credit to the South African universities on this one, because they've agreed to ensure that they move their academic calendar for 2021. They will be starting around March and April. This then also reduces the anxiety for grade 12s. And therefore, they should know that they are not going to lose 2021 with regards to getting ready for the universities. What is required, though, as you have pointed out, is that we need to start thinking around how are we going to coexist with the virus. We have to look at technology, for example, explore that avenue, probably offer blended learning, and ensure, or even a hybrid approach where you say to the students, we've got both the online system as well as your contact sessions for the students. If you are providing contact sessions, you have to ensure that you keep in line with what the Department of Health is requiring from all of us, and that is the basic protocols of social distancing, wearing a mask, and really cover your nose and your mouth, and ensure that you wash your hands regularly.
All right, thank you so much for that, Wonga Njinga, the Independent Institute of Education's Senior Head of Programming.